Hi, still updating our connection, so hang tight. There we go. It looks like we are all connected. Hello and welcome to Evelynn's Clearing Conversations. I am Evylyn Rose. I'm an empowerment guide, tarot reader, basic educator all around. Want to help you guys with your spiritual health. And so I do live streams on Mondays, my lunar lunch breaks at 1 p.m. Eastern time. And then I also do the Saturday sessions, obviously 5 p.m. Starting just a couple minutes late today. Had a little issue with the mic check, but we are rolling now. Um, so little bit of a chaotic day. I have been up earlier than my norm. My son had his science Olympiad this morning. He and his partner won eighth place in barge building, so that was super fun. They also got to compete in map reading, which was new this year. They did not make it to that list, but the fact that they studied and put as much work into it as they did, and it had paid off, that they were actually able to answer the questions that came up in that event, that in itself was a feat because none of us, the teachers, the parents, the other participants, because it was a new event, nobody had any idea what was going to actually be involved in that. Um, and so he would like for me to show off his medal from the barge building. Let me see if I can get that to show up in the camera. I'm always happy to, like most parents, I will sit there and nerd out over. I don't think it will not focus on that. Oh, he's poking his face in. All right. Thank you for sharing. But that's the elementary level science Olympiad. So for a first timer, that's amazing. Super proud. Like most parents, I'm gonna gush over my children. I cannot help myself. That includes the fur babies if they are being super cute. Um, and of course, I will be just as stressed out and annoyed if they are not being super cute. Um, but all right. So, again, just to let you know, this is part of why if I seem a little out of it, if I seem a little less prepared than I normally am, that is just tired brain, a little scattered, been up since much earlier than my norm. The double espresso that I started the day off with has long, long faded away. So I'm on pure trying to prepare for tomorrow energy at this point. Speaking of tomorrow, for those of you guys in or near the Newark, Delaware area, we do have a little event going on tomorrow, 11 a.m. to 4 p.m. at the little treasure shop and gallery here in Newark. It's right on the corner of Elkton Road, like where South Main Street turns into Elkton Road, and West Park Place. And so it's called the Little Treasure Shop. If you've never been, it is amazing. It's all artists, crafters, sell their work in this shop. Which is part of why they're having what they call the rebrand bash. Um, I will be there offering tarot readings. I believe there's going to be live music, some tea time. There's supposed to be a fancy like cheese and deli like condiment type stuff. I honestly I won't be able to partake myself for dietary reasons, but it will be there and available. So definitely come check us out. Some of the extra activities are paid, but everything in that shop in that gallery 100% supports the local artists, crafters, and things like that. Um, the shop owners, they don't make anything off of the sales. So 100% of what you pay goes toward those artists. And it's what allows them to have their space there in the shop. So please come out, support our local crafters, artists, and artisans, our local small business um, owners and entrepreneurs like myself. We definitely need that support. So again, that's going to be in the Newark, Delaware little treasure shop and gallery. It's right off of South Main Street and West Park Place. If you're not in that area, well, thank you for chiming into to this session, I do want to make sure I get into questions. If you have not been part of one of my live streams before, I do have a little bit of a squirrel brain. So I might kind of seem like I'm going off into different topics, but I do eventually bring it back to the point. Anyone who's ever, any of my former classroom students can tell you I can kind of get a little rambly, but overall you will walk away learning something you didn't know before. Um, so the way that I usually run my Q&As and my AMA sessions is I tend to prioritize any questions that are posted into the chat. I'm dual streaming, meaning that I am on multiple platforms at the same time. So you're either tuning in through Twitch or you're tuning in through YouTube. My chat consolidates and I can see any questions posted in either chat, and I will prioritize those. I do have other questions that I do have prepared so that if there aren't any active questions in the chat, we're not just sitting here twiddling our thumbs and waiting for someone with a question to show up or build up that courage to post into a live chat. I'm one of those who does not like to post questions in a live chat in the public sphere, so I totally get it if that's you. So the questions that are prepared, where these come from, are people who have emailed me directly, questions that pop up in learning communities on social media, that people have asked me to address. It's also people that I meet in person, or who know me personally, and they're like, hey, this would be something that I'd like to know more about. Sometimes I explicitly say, please answer these on the sessions, and other times I ask them if they mind if I also share this question in this space. So that's where these questions come from. So if you are one of my shyer lurker types who doesn't want to type into the chat, but you do have a question or something I say makes you say you need more to that, send me an email. I'm more than happy to take that information. If you're like, don't respond to this email, just answer it on the Q&A. I can do that too. That's no problem. All of us have different social social comfort zones. If I had tried, for example, if I had tried to do this same exact thing 5 or 6 years ago, I probably would have told you no, because I would not be able to be on camera. That is something that took years and years and years to get over that social anxiety. So trust me, I get it if you're one of my lurkers. Again, recap, if you have a question, pop in the chat. I will prioritize it. If I'm actively in the middle of answering another question, I'll obviously answer that first, or finish answering that first, then address the questions that are in the chat. Anytime I don't see questions in the chat, I will jump back over to these list of questions that I have ahead of time. So with that said, let's go ahead and get in it. If you're curious about what types of questions, these mostly have to deal with, I have several dealing specifically with tarot, some more general witchcraft, modern witchcraft practices, traditions, things of that nature, general spirituality or intuitive type questions, things dealing, for example, with like sacred space or um, using crystals or where to learn more information or addressing any misconceptions or stereotypes. These Saturday sessions tend to be better for those like deep dives into like, hey, somebody always said that this happened, or oh, I saw this thing in a movie one time. Is that real? Answering those stereotype misconception type questions are perfect for these Saturday sessions where we have more time, because this is an hour-long session, so we'll be going until 6 p.m. That said, I've rambled on enough for this intro. Let's go ahead and get started. Let's see, where do we want to start today? All right. Ooh, I feel like that one I might want to come with a list prepared for you guys. Let me maybe skip that one. So I think we'll start with some of the tarot questions because I like those. One of my favorite ones that pops up is this, like, can you ask the same question multiple times? And what I love about this question is the fact that you're even asking it. because there are some inside jokes among not just tarot readers, but anybody who works with any sort of intuitive tool. So this might be reading runes or uh, other, like, I think now a newer trend coming up are like the different versions of charms where you kind of have like various different icon images, either drawn or um, like little, well, this one's a little too large of an example, but like little charms like this, but like a much smaller type, where it depicts something on there. So like this one has a heart with a rose, so maybe you have a little tiny version of something like that, and they just kind of scatter them, right? And what happens a lot with people who use these kinds of tools, oh, pendulums is another fantastic example. A lot of times we, if we get an answer that we don't particularly like, there is always that joke that we tend to just do the readings over again. And don't do that. First of all, it doesn't work the way you think it will work, and secondly, I have found that even if, especially with tarot, even if you pull different cards, the general theme, the general broader answer still remains the same. Um, so can you? Absolutely, certainly. People do it all day long, and we meme about it. It's hilarious. So don't, I wouldn't recommend it. I don't think it's helpful. Um, Usually what I find helps better with these kinds of modalities, since they are meant to be used more for that purpose of self-reflection, introspection, empowerment, and spiritual growth. The best way to handle a question that like just keeps coming up and keeps coming up, and you don't feel like you've gotten quite to the answer, is usually to do that reading, maybe record it. This is where journaling comes in handy, and then after some time has gone by and you have done more work on it. Maybe it's, and that work can be anything. So that can be, maybe you're doing meditations. Maybe you're working with a therapist and you're doing shadow work. It could be maybe social related, and you've now had conversations with that individual that you have these questions about. Um, and so give it some time. So we're talking days, weeks, months, and then you can revisit that same question. Again, if that question is still like eating away at you, if you will. So ideally, you don't want to keep asking the same question back to back. You kind of want to actually do the things to then see, okay, where are we at now? And that's a more appropriate way to handle these kinds of tools, whether it's tarot specific, oracle cards, pendulums, runes, whatever charms, whatever your tool is that you use, you can, or readers that you go and see, whatever that question is, give it some time to evolve, for the answer to evolve before you ask that same question again. Um, Now, if you are thinking about, I want to see this question addressed from multiple angles, absolutely, please do. I used to work as an office manager briefly toward the end of the former owner of the Celebration Fairs, Celebration Productions in Colorado Springs, and we would throw these massive fairs. So if you're not familiar, I don't know if they still do them because I haven't been in Colorado for years now. But before the original owner had sold the business, it would be 4 total fairs. So twice a year in Denver, twice a year in Colorado Springs. And we would have, oh God, I don't even remember the final count, but we would have these venues filled to the brim with various readers. So you had tarot, angel cards, oracle cards, pendulums, numerologists, I Ching, um, full-on spiritualists, mediums, um, oh my goodness, there were just so many different modalities. And so if you went to something like that where you literally had all these specialists with specialized skills and tools and approaches to these divinatory and spiritual practices, and you wanted to ask that same question to people of different types of readers of different specialties, that actually isn't a bad idea, especially if you have something where you want or need a more well-rounded, in-depth explanation. So again, I really do love this question about asking the same question multiple times, because depending on the context, the answer might be, "Oh, don't do that," or it might be, yeah, do that. It's just like if you um, have a complex medical issue and it's a mystery and your doctor can't figure it out, you don't stop at just your primary, and your primary doctor probably isn't stopping either. They might be like, you know what? Let's send you over to this specialist. And that could even be just getting labs done or getting an x-ray report. That's technically another specialist who has to look at that, write up a report, and then send that report to your doctor, and then your doctor interprets that with what they have. And that's just with your primary being the only person you're actively talking to. That's before we get into specialized doctors and surgeons and things of that nature. So in that same way, when it comes to spiritual matters, you can talk to more than one person about the same question that you have. Um, Absolutely. Let's see. So again, hopefully that answered that question for you. If you have any questions, if you need me to clarify, you can either pop it into the chat, or if you're watching this as a replay later, by all means, send me an email. I'm happy to address it if I didn't quite address it the way you were hoping I would. Let's see. All right, let's see. I think I'm just going to go down this list of some fantastic tarot questions I have today. Okay, so the next one up, because I don't see anything in the chat currently. If you're typing, go ahead and type that in. Otherwise, I'm just going to keep moving. All right, can you read tarot for yourself, or would that be too biased to do it that way? Yes, just straight yes. It's a two-parter question, but the answer is still yes. So reading tarot for yourself, absolutely. I am one of those who that's the way I learned, was to read for myself. A lot of that was just trying to get the hang of it. Is it real? Does this actually work the way people say it works? There was a lot of discovery there, like, oh, some stuff about the way people say it works, it does not really work that way. And then other stuff is like, oh wow, this is actually a really helpful tool for me. Um, that then, of course, branched off to doing that for friends, and then doing that for family that maybe are more cynical or skeptical. Then branching out to, other people, coworkers, and then eventually to just total strangers showing up at my booth, and I am doing tarot readings for them. They've never even heard my name before, and here I am suddenly spilling all their secrets they didn't know that somebody could just look at some cardstock and ink and magically know. Um, so yes, you can read for yourself. And like, I think that from my personal experiences, and that is a bias of mine, is that reading for yourself is valuable to learn the tarot. Um, because you are your best indicator of knowing, hey, when I do this, this is accurate. And when you're journaling to look for patterns, you're able to see and track in your own life, and you have no choice but to be honest with yourself of like, hey, I did this reading, this is what I thought it was saying was going to happen, this is what did happen. Whereas a stranger, if you're trying to quiz them and be like, hey, just following up, how did that go, they may or may not be forthcoming, or they might not necessarily answer your question in the same way that would help you compare your notes. So it is helpful to learn initially reading for yourself. As far as being too biased, yes. One of the downsides to reading for yourself is bias does jump in there. And it's not even just reading for yourself, it's reading for anybody. I have sat down with highly experienced readers who have been reading tarot cards for themselves and for other people longer than I have been on this earth. And in the course of the reading, having to, like, I tend to be more polite, so I will bite my tongue for the most part. Unless I have to step up and self advocate, I will just kind of politely be like, oh, really? Is that so? Because the bias does come in there. We are human, we can't escape it. This is why we nowadays have across every industry, no matter what your job or career field, industry, degree program, whatever it is you're doing in life, there's anti-bias training these days. And the reason for that is because we are discovering within the field of psychology, like, wow, this, and sociology, like, this is getting in our way, these biases. Um, so it does come up doing readings for yourself, but it comes up when you're doing readings for other people too. So if you haven't learned how to read tarot and you want to try that out for yourself, go explore. Have any friends you know that do any readings, sit down with them, have them do readings for you, and just listen and wait for the bias to show up, because it is there, I promise. I personally prefer to be called out on my biases, so that I can address them, or so I can stop and say, okay, is there a reason that I'm thinking it's this way that is legitimate, or is it my bias that's making me say this right now? So I personally prefer the feedback, but not everybody handles the ego check, if you will. Being called out on a bias in the moment is definitely an ego check. All right. So again, yes, you can read for yourself. Yes, bias is going to be there. And that can influence your interpretations. It doesn't necessarily mean that your interpretations are going to be wrong or ineffective or unhelpful. It just means that, hey, you might miss the mark. This goes back again, especially if any readings you do for yourself, or that you have other people do readings for you. Get notes, write notes, journal about it. Your journaling can be extensive and detailed and fill out a whole page over this one reading. Or it could be as simple as, like, let me snap a little picture and I'm just going to jot down like the major interpretation points, some keywords or something. So it can be super detailed or it can be super short and sweet. But the reason you want to do that is so that you can go back and you can look. And then if there are biases getting in the way that prevent you personally from doing readings for yourself, there are certain topic areas in my life where I know, like, I can do readings for myself and I absolutely will. But those are also the moments that I go and I seek out my friends and my network, um, for readings from other people and say, hey, I need you to do a reading for me. And I'm not ashamed of that, because those are those moments that I need it. So it's no shame in getting a reading done by somebody else, even if you are a professional tarot reader for other people. Um, so again, the answer to that question, to both parts of that question, is just yes. All right. Let's see. All right. So another one that came up was what's the difference between tarot decks and oracle cards? This is another one that I really like. Comes up a lot. And what's interesting to me is this is one of those questions that don't necessarily come up immediately. It tends to come up when somebody says something, and it's usually, uh, they hear tarot, they associate card deck readings with tarot, so they just assume that anything that is a card deck that involves shuffling, pulling cards at random in answer to a question, they refer to that as a tarot deck, and that's actually inaccurate. A lot of times, the more appropriate term would be oracle cards. Sometimes they might be called something else, like, angel cards is another common name, but that's usually because they're specific to angels, in the imagery. But they can have many different names, but they fall under that umbrella of oracle cards. Whereas tarot cards have a very specific format. While modern decks may have some, especially if it was crowdfunded, so like on Kickstarter, for example, you may have a tarot deck that is a legitimate tarot deck, but has more or less than the typical 78 cards. The standard traditional tarot has 78 cards. It has a major arcana numbered 0 to 21, so 22 cards total. And then the remaining of the 78 are the minor arcana, and that's what looks a lot like our typical playing cards. So yes, you could technically do a tarot-based reading using tarot card or using a playing card deck. That said, you can do that with a lot of different gaming decks as well. Meanwhile, oracle cards can range from like 5 cards to like 500 cards. It can get really simple, could be really complex. Oracle cards typically will have most oracle cards that I have seen usually have some sort of message to it already onto the card. So there's usually a booklet comes with it with much longer, at least one page descriptions of like what that card is meant to be a message of. But on the card itself will usually be at least one little message. There might be a title and a message. Um, so like maybe it says persistence and what is it? Oh, hi. So maybe the message is persistence and then like underneath it will be like a little thing saying like, just keep going no matter what's happening or something like that, right? That would be an example of like the little messages you might see on an oracle card. Meanwhile, tarot is there's usually a number and then there's a name and then there's an image that will typically be standardized to some degree. Even though there's so many different tarot decks out there now, the imagery spans so differently. The vast majority are based off of the Rider-Waite-Smith deck, so they typically have similar themes in the imagery. Whereas oracle cards can like no two decks are going to be the same. There's no formula to it. There's no, I can teach you that all using this one oracle card and you will be able to do oracle card readings the exact same way with every single deck. Like you're not going to see that because those decks vary so much. Whereas with tarot, it's when we teach you a tarot reading, you can apply that to literally any deck. There might be some decks that aren't of that Rider-Waite-Smith, so they might be a little different, but for the most part, it's like subtle differences and you can figure it out. A good example of that one would be the I have a deck by John Holland, so it's called the Psychic Tarot Oracle deck because it is based off of tarot. But what the artist did was he combined some of those major arcana cards and some of those minor arcana cards. So he combined some of them, and then he added in 7 chakra cards. And so it ended up being less than 78 cards total. And so it's called a tarot oracle deck because it is heavily steeped in the tarot. And if you are well versed in the tarot, even though it's not the same number of cards, there's these extra chakra cards. The changes are easy enough for somebody well versed in tarot to recognize and be able to work with. Whereas if I have that oracle deck and then I bring in like, I wish I had an oracle deck in front of me, and of course I don't when I have this question. Like if I sat there and I learned just that one card deck, I think this was a thing that used to happen with what was that, Doreen Virtue. I think she used to make so many angel decks. Oh my goodness, I lost count. But there would be like specific classes for learning that specific deck and how to work with that specific deck. And it's like now you go pick up another oracle deck from some other artist that's completely different and you will never ever be able to just pick one up and immediately go, oh, I see what they did there. Like it's a totally different experience from that other deck that you just mastered, right? Um, uh, Tenders, I have Rider-Waite-Smith, Marseilles, and Golden Dawn. Still learning the other two. Yeah, so there's a lot of different ones. And so since that question does kind of help me finish wrapping up this, what's the difference between tarot and oracle? This question of have you tried the other versions, and if so, which ones do you like? So I'll be honest, I can never quite work out. I haven't looked into enough of the history of the Marseilles and the Golden Dawn versions. So when I'm holding a deck of those, I could not actually tell you which one it is. I could just tell you it's not Rider-Waite-Smith. It's not the RS or RWS. Oh my goodness, I say it worse trying to do it by acronym. So so I can usually tell right off the bat it's that standard Rider-Waite-Smith and it's not Rider-Waite-Smith. some of the decks, see, and that's so hard for me because I love all tarot regardless. Um, because they usually help me if I have that imagery for one that's not in that classical system or that most recognized system, which of course for those of you who don't know, that's the Rider-Waite-Smith. If you don't have that, and it's not part of that, the cards will still be tarot. So there will be something in that imagery that's presented so differently that it helps me deepen my understanding of that card that I can then apply to any other deck. Um, so that's kind of so like with me a lot of times when I read, like I see multiple decks in my head. So even though there's one card that's in front of me from this specific deck, that might not necessarily be the one that the information is going to. Instead, I see that card and my brain immediately shows me an image from a different deck. And so I focus on the image that pops up for me in that reading, using that as the trigger point for that intuitive information to come through. So that would kind of be that, like you hear that guidance of like the tarot card or the tarot deck in your head. That's how mine is. It's just a composite of all the cards. I need to look into one of my favorites is definitely my Dragon Tarot that I've talked about before. Um, and I don't believe that one is Rider-Waite-Smith. I don't think that's a Smith deck. But I'm not sure whether it's Marseilles or Golden Dawn. So I'm gonna have to look into that more because I I feel terrible that I couldn't tell you. That's been happening to me too. I sometimes think of the old card Rider-Waite-Smith image, even though I'm reading something different. Yeah, yeah, it does. It pops up. The more you learn, the more decks you work with. It's why I recommend anybody who seriously wants to learn um, tarot, like, really does need to pick up more decks. I can't remember if it was the last time I did the Saturday session or if it was one of the Monday sessions where um, I had addressed the people who pick up a tarot deck and a little booklet, and then like 2 weeks later they're bragging about how they're a professional tarot reader and they're actively charging people online to do readings, and it's like, please stop that. Like, you cannot learn these in 2 weeks. Can you do readings for other people? Sure, because if you were watching the beginning of this particular stream, I was talking about how you can um, reading for yourself first is my strategy, but some people learn to read for other people before they learn to read for themselves. They do the reverse. And okay, yeah, so it was the last Saturday one I did. Okay. Um, perfect. I felt like it was a Saturday one because I felt like I was rambling like I am tonight. Um, so yeah, so I've kind of gotten away from my point a little bit. Thank you for bearing with me. Um, to that, the original question that we kind of pulled this question into was that what's the difference between tarot and oracle cards? So that's kind of that difference. Is oracle cards are your, I don't necessarily want to call them a free for all, but for lack of another phrase coming to my brain in this moment, and I've been trying to find a phrase for like the past however long I've been trying to answer this question. We're gonna call it a free for all. It's kind of like a free for all. It's not just the solar system, it's the whole universe, right? It's not even just our galaxy, it's the whole universe. Oracle cards vary greatly, widely, whereas tarot would very much be more like, okay, just this solar system. Like, it's all kind of fitting in the same framework, even if the imagery is different, even if there's slightly different takes to the specific messages. So like with the Golden Dawn versions, those um, tend to have a different like spiritual framework to it than the Rider-Waite-Smith ones did. Um, even though they're still technically the same key archetype energies, the spiritual importance of it can differ between those sets. At least that's always been my understanding of these different systems. So think of those as the different planets within the solar system. This is my nerdy space science trying to come in here as an analogy. Okay. Free for all is a good way to put. Oracle cards cover so many topics. Oh my goodness. I think if I ask my son right now to round up like all of his Oracle card decks, we have everything from like sea animals to just animals to Familiars, which are also animals, to cats, because there have to be cats. There's aliens, so various different things from out of just any kind of aliens. There's uh, spirit animals, spirit allies, angels, ascended masters. I don't know. I could be here all day long. Pick a topic. There are oracle cards for it. I actually try to convince some of my artist friends to let me steal their artwork to create an oracle card deck, because it literally would be taking the artwork they already have and just assigning meaning to these images. I have a friend whose style of art, I'm like, oh my god, this would make such a perfect oracle deck. I just haven't been able to convince her yet. Um, we'll get there. We'll get there. She stays very busy doing other stuff. Um, let me finish reading that. Okay, so oracle cards cover so many topics, and tarot can be themed and have some additions, but there are specific images that's part of the deck's culture. Exactly that. Um, I have oracle cards for saints and songs. Oh yes. And I've been eyeing the Meryl Streep tarot deck recently. Oh my gosh, if you get it, share. I totally would love that. My son and I have been super excited when we it felt like out of nowhere, because I definitely never heard anything about it, that they were doing another Devil Wears Prada, because I had just introduced him to that movie like 2 or 3 weeks before they dropped the teaser trailer, and I was like, oh, what? And then we both watched the trailer together, and he was just like, oh my god, I want to know more. I'm like, same. So if you get that deck, definitely need to share it. Oh yeah, I'm so ready for it. Me too. Me too, definitely. Oh my goodness. All right. So, where are we at? So we are at coming up on 20 minutes left. So we could definitely fit in some more questions. Um, doo, doo, doo. Let's see. Oh, is that all the tarot specific questions? Nope. Nope. I do have a couple more tarot specific questions. All right. Can you cleanse a tarot deck, and how often should you? This is such a personalized question. um, so this is where it helps to have, let me see how I want to word this. To really learn and recognize your intuitive and psychic talents, so that when you start to feel like something's a little off, I am getting blinded by my sun. I'm going to lean forward so I'm out of that sun a little bit. It brings my face closer, so hopefully it's not looking like all the drain from being up entirely too early today. Um, so cleansing the decks, a lot of times I find it's not necessary to cleanse them after every single reading. I know some people who do. Some who do after every session. If I do like a big event where there are, thousands of people in attendance of the whole event, and I've had hundreds of people like walk by my tent, and, you know, dozens or more people like hands on the deck or surrounding areas like that's usually my, I'm just gonna, any of the decks that I had with me that day, I'm just gonna go ahead and do a cleansing on all of them. Just for any residual whatever that they might have picked up. Um, as far as like, again, after every reading, I don't find particularly necessary. But there have been times where I have done a reading and something about afterwards, like the next person goes to pick that deck, and I'm like, you know what? I want to shuffle this extra times, and um, I used to think this was the strangest idea for cleansing was taking the deck and, hold on, I've got a deck here I can kind of shuffling and then kind of just knocking on the card. And I used to think that was like the weirdest thing. And then I stopped and I kind of thought about how energy functions and energy works. Like, think scientifically, think physics. If you didn't take physics, it's okay. I didn't take it back in high school either. Um, I've definitely had to learn since then. But think what basic things you know of energy and matter in term energy, how they interact. So if the cards are your matter, we're talking about spiritual energy here when we're talking about cleansing tarot decks or any other tools. And so if knocking on something is literally sending waves. You're creating waves, like an earthquake, right? Like there's waves, there's energy release, right? If I'm trying to make stuck energy go away, knocking it disrupts it, right? It makes it move. Okay. So once I kind of really thought about that, and I'm like, okay, let's apply this spiritually speaking, and knocking on the cards makes a whole lot of sense. Which of course right now my brain just squirreled a little bit and is now very curious if this is where the superstition of knocking on wood came from. I'm now gonna have to look into that more. I would not doubt it if that were the case, but I've also never specifically heard that. So please don't quote me as saying that that's the origin of it. Like, please don't say that. But again, so there's other ways to cleanse decks any way you would cleanse any spiritual tools. So incense smoke, specific herbs for smoke cleansings are good for that kind of stuff. Any cleansing specific herbs, again, the main focus is on that spiritual energy. And then again, how often can really vary. I tend to like using the intuitive method the most. Um, oh, I do the knock method as well if I did a reading that has a high emotional charge, or after a big bunch of readings, I upgrade to the smoke crystal cleanse. Yeah, that's kind of when I start bringing out the bigger, the bigger guns, if you will, in terms of spiritual cleansing, is when like it definitely there feels like an ick to it. I've had people where I have done readings for them, or they have just explored cards that I have, and there's something about a deck that kind of rubs them the wrong way. And even though most of the time when that happens, that's usually like a personal issue with them. Maybe there's something in the imagery that hits a particular like emotional or mental wound that they have. So maybe they don't have a conscious idea. They just know like, ooh, I don't like that. And so sometimes that ick feeling for somebody else, if I don't also have an ick feeling to it, I usually don't think much of it. But in those times, it's if it doesn't hurt to do a cleansing for the deck if something like that were to happen, where you're not picking up on it, but somebody else is. It might just be them and it's just their stuff, but it doesn't hurt to go and do a cleansing. If you decide you want to do the big fancy cleansing ritual after every single time you use a tarot deck, by all means have at it. Like, I'm who's to say, but I think that's going a little bit above and beyond what is strictly necessary. It's kind of like you can take a shower 3 or 5 times a day, but do you need to? Like, is that necessary, or is that just a a little too much, right? Um, Kind of that same concept. So, uh, let's see. Hopefully that helped to answer that question. Again, if I ever answer a question for you and it's I didn't quite hit it in depth, whether you're here live. If you're here live, of course, you can drop a question in the chat and ask me to go deeper or clarify. Um, and if you're watching this as a replay, if you're like, wait, that was my question, but I didn't quite catch or understand what you're saying there, or if you want me to go a little deeper with it, please feel free to email me, reach out on social. Um, when you guys reach out to me ahead of time, I always make sure to add it to this list that I have. Once I answer questions, I usually remove them. Um, let's see. So again, yeah, please definitely do reach out if I ever am unclear, or if I get a little too rambly and you're like, yeah, that didn't make sense. If you need a more clear cut, just email me. I can always either respond directly to the email, or if you'd rather me answer it in a video format, just let me know and I'm happy to do that. Let's see. And then there was, I think, one more tarot specific question that I had, since I kind of seem to be on that theme today. All right. What's the best way to start learning tarot card meanings? So you're specifically looking into tarot. So I'm one of those, like, just grab a deck and just play with it. It's kind of like learning when you're a little kid and the first time you see like playing cards, like or maybe you're like, oh my god, the Pokemon cards or Yu-Gi-Oh cards, or pick a trading card game. Um, I've I will admit to my nerdery that I have been collecting Lorcana cards. Don't like, I know they'll be worthless in like 5 seconds, but I don't care. They're pretty and fun. So I have them. But my son is huge into Pokemon. And yeah. So no, I know you can't hear him because my mic kind of cuts out that kind of stuff, but he's in the back right now singing Pokemon. Um, anyway, so the best way to start, just like with any of those, when you first open it up, like start looking at them, explore them, see what's there. If there's words on there, read the words. Look at the images. I used to, years ago, I loved Magic the Gathering cards. My older brother tried to teach me how to play. I learned how to play, and then I completely forgot how to play. But I continued, and I loved collecting the cards for years later because the artwork was just so gorgeous. I would spend hours just going through and staring at these images. Oh my goodness, they were so pretty. Uh, can't tell. I like my art. I like art. Um, so exploring those images, like, did that necessarily help me learn how to play Magic the Gathering? No, but it does mean that I could recognize it. So if I'm talking to somebody who does play and they start talking about certain moves or rules or something that happened in a competition they did, like, I actually have a sense of what they're talking about, not because I had learned how to play before, but because I spent so much time just looking at these cards and seeing what they said, seeing what they looked like. So that is step one, is find a deck and explore the deck. One of my favorite activities I like to do for groups is literally me bringing like a huge chunk of the tarot cards and oracle cards that I own, and like I shove them into a suitcase and I drag them along with me and then lay them all out and I say, have fun, like explore. Um, because that is by far and obviously after those is usually when I do a nice cleanse on them because I don't know who touched which deck. Going back to that question, just for a second. But just exploring the cards is that first step. Knowing what's in there, seeing what's there. Um, as you start to dive a little deeper, I recommend that little white book, that little booklet that comes with it. And now I say that because most decks back in the day literally had. Do I have a box with me? I do. Ooh, let me find that. Okay. Okay. Okay, so this one. It's a little white book. It's literally like it'll have a little bit of here's about this deck or about tarot in general, and then it immediately starts diving into the meanings of each of those cards. This one is thankfully like it actually has sentences, so this is a little larger. I know my camera does not like to show details if you get too close to it, but and then I think this one, oh, this one has multiple languages, so it has even more pages than a typical one. So they used to be even smaller than this. But anyway, so these little white books used to just have basic keywords or buzzwords, and that's it can be both unhelpful and super helpful. So for me, I like the intuitive approach to tarot cards. Um, if you work on memorizing the cards before you start doing readings, if you're going to sit there and be like, I'm going to learn all the complex meanings of all 78 cards, and then I'm going to do a reading, and then that's just your intellect. It's your intellect doing all that work. But if you want to learn how to really read the cards, and that's how you want to explore tarot card meanings, then what you're going to want to do is literally draw these cards, look at them, see how they look. Like, okay, I pulled let's see, let me find, I'm going to just pull a card. Okay. So I ended up with, are you my 9 of Wands? Okay. And this is well, you guys saw my little white book for this one. It's the Egyptian Art Nouveau. Okay. So I ended up pulling this little 9 of Wands. Wait, yes, 9. I know my Roman numerals. The details are so blurry on this camera. I apologize. Okay. So with my Nine of Wands, like, so I'm going to just look at it. What do I see when I glance at this? And like, I immediately, notice we've got our figure who is paddling this boat through the water with the flame. Oh, this isn't the wands. Is this my deck that doesn't give the names on the cards? This is my hermit. That's embarrassing. Okay. So, quick heads up for anybody who's never actually looked at tarot cards. Typically, you would have a number at the top, just like this one does, and then down at the bottom, you would have the name for it. So in this case, it should say Hermit or the Hermit or something like that. It do be like that sometimes, yeah. Okay, so this deck, obviously I have not used it often enough, even though it's the one that sits at my computer. And so because it had no word on it, I automatically assume I'm looking at minor arcana. So I see a 9. I'm like, oh, it's a 9 of something. Okay, well, I see water, and I'm like, but there's no cups or chalices or anything indicating that. And so when I saw the hermit's lantern here, I was like, oh, it's wands. It's okay. So this is where the downside to knowing too much, which really actually is a great case in point for why you don't go the intellectual approach to memorizing card meanings and why it takes you longer than 2 weeks before you're ready to start charging people to do readings professionally. This is a case in point. Okay, so for for those of you watching the replay, I see I'm running out of time, so I'm so busy laughing at myself right now. If you can come across just Roman numerals, odds are good it's a major. If you see an Arabic number with symbols, words, suits, it's a minor. Okay, and that's another another trick to it. My decks always have the Roman numerals with words on the majors. This is one of my only decks that is set up in this way. Oh my goodness, so embarrassing. This goes back to that earlier question of which style do I typically use. Um, okay, so again, so we're on that. What's the best way to start learning tarot card meanings? So ideally, by the time you've gotten to the point where you've already looked around, now you've pulled this card, it's laying there. What are those things jumping at you? Maybe you do exactly what I just did and mistake it for a different one by name, or maybe you haven't even looked at the little white book enough to even know the name, even if it had the name written directly on it. So you don't even know that information. So you're just kind of looking and you're seeing you've got that figure wadding through the water. You can see the palm trees in the background. There's this little lantern that's sitting up on top, high on top of the boat. So it's kind of lighting the way. So it must be nighttime, right? So again, for that image, it's clearly lit up where the lamp is. So we're definitely looking at either there's a moon right behind that lamp, or it's the artist is showing us that radiation of light. My brain interpreted it initially as kind of that radiating light, and then I thought a little deeper and was like, you know what, maybe that's supposed to be the moon. But it's that intuitive impulse when you're first learning to read. That's that kind of thing when they say, what is that first thing you see? So even though my initial interpretation of that specific imagery, I would say chances are good is not what the artist had intended when they drew it, or when they whatever art medium they use. I apologize. I love art. I am not the artist. um, that's usually that clue of looking at what this card might mean for you in a particular reading, or for whoever you're doing the reading for. So like if I did look at that and immediately think, oh, it's a moon, and that's what stuck out, then I might be sitting there thinking about how lunar energies or lunar symbolism or maybe lunar deities relates in some way to this particular question that you have, or whatever the reason for pulling this particular card was. But in my initial response to it was seeing kind of like a glow around the lamp is how I initially interpreted that. And so for me, like, that's going to be a little different. It's like, wow, this lamp is literally radiating light. It's literally saying, look, this is a beacon. I am calling to you, which definitely this is how I recognized it was the hermit. My bad. Um, is because that is what the hermit does. He's solo. He's on his own. He doesn't have anybody else helping him steer or move this boat. He is on his own, doing it, and he's fine. He doesn't seem upset about it. He doesn't seem like he's perfectly happy or content with it. But the hermit is known for leading by example. They kind of go, sometimes they go their own way, sometimes they go out and seek solitude. But in doing it, they're not doing it for like, oh my God, I can't stay in the world. I need to get away from the world. It's more of a, I need to go because there's something I need to do for myself or that I need to learn. And in doing so, they forge a path that others can be inspired by, which is again, with that initial interpretation, like that's what I would think. If that's the first thing that caught my eye was that lantern and me interpreting that light behind it being a radiation of that light as like a beacon, then that's what I'm going to think of the message being. So this is why your intuition can tell you more than what a straight intellectual, I memorized everything in the books kind of approach. You want that intuitive, what was the first thing that came to mind? What's the gut reaction? What is the meaning of this? Like, even if I did sit there and I'm doing a reading and oopsie daisies, I thought it was the Nine of Wands and I keep talking about Nine of Wands and, the person across from me is just like, does she not know that's the hermit? The message would still ultimately be the same because I'm looking at the imagery within the card. I'm just using my words wrong. If that makes sense. This is where that intuitive approach comes in. It also goes back to um, what we were talking about earlier about how sometimes we're giving readings and we're using one particular deck. So maybe I'm using this deck and I put a card down and it's like the Three of Wands. And I swear I saw the Three of Wands. And then all of a sudden, later on in the reading, as I'm looking at all the cards that are in my spread, I might sit there and see that Three of Cards and say, or Three of Wands and realize, oh, I said that was a Three of Wands, but I'm looking again, and that was definitely the Two of Wands. And yes, this is an example from an actual moment I had doing a reading for somebody. And then what's interesting in those moments when I've had something like that happen, it's usually one of those cases of there's a card I pulled, there's what I saw, there's what images stood out for me, there's the mental card of other decks that pops up, an imagery that pops up that gives me the message. And that's what I talk about. But when I look at the overall spread and the overall themes that I'm seeing and the patterns emerging, and I look at it, I'm like, well, even though I said that was the Three of Wands and technically the card was a Two of Wands, it was that, I guess you could say, liminal space between the two and the three of the wands, like that place of like that decision still being made, but also being ready, like simultaneously. So for those who don't know anything about tarot, Two of Wands is typically that deciding factor of where to put your energy. I'm going super simplistic, don't mind me. Versus the Three of Wands, where like you already know and you are ready and you are just waiting to go, like you're in the waiting phase. So if what was interesting in those moments when things like that happened in this particular example, I read it and kept saying it as a Three of Wands, but when I talked about it with the person I was doing the reading for, it was very much a Two of Wands in that transition to the Three of Wands. So it's kind of one of those, when I looked at the full spread, they were already on the edge of the decision. They were there. Like once the decision was made, they would be ready to go. And they were already on that verge of that decision in that moment, getting that reading that day. So this is why we push for trust your intuition. Don't just intellectualize it, because that is not how tarot works. When you're dealing with the spiritual, it's all the things. This is why when I talk about my specialized approach to one-on-one readings, I call them embodied tarot sessions, because yes, embodied, like you have to mind, body, soul, like it's physical health, emotional health, mental health, spiritual health. Tarot is a tool for helping you with all of that. Your spirituality in general, not just tarot specific, is about embodying it, seeing that interweaving the full holistic health picture. Tools like tarot, these are tools to help us with that spiritual health aspect. Um, and I'm saying a lot. This is how we know. like I said, that espresso from early this morning, that double espresso is well worn off, and we have actually come to the end of this hour. We kind of start a couple minutes late, so I guess it's not the end of the night, but I do want to make sure I end on some updates. Again, we can always revisit that question if anybody wants me to come back to that about ways to start with tarot card meanings. I'm happy to go over that without my mess up next time, please. if if the universe will allow. All right. So of course, first update as always, please. I do have the Starlight Circle. Is my newsletter. I send it out once a month. I'm actually going to be. I'm hoping to get that out either tonight or first thing in the morning. So please definitely sign up for the Starlight Circle. It's a monthly newsletter. I usually have exclusive content in there, usually some short, simple exercises, things that help you better your life in some way. I also do subscriber specials, get early access to upcoming deals, courses, things of that nature. So please, if you haven't already, make sure to sign up for that. The show notes do have that link in there. My upcoming live stream, the next one is on Monday at 1 p.m. Eastern Time, right here in the US. So if you have questions and you want those answered Monday, send me an email. We'll get it done. Or just tune in and ask it right there in the chat. And again, I'll be here for Clearing Conversations next Saturday, 5 p.m. Again, how to submit the questions if you're here live in the chat. If you want me to add it to my list of questions that I answer in between chat questions, just send me an email. If you use Twitch, I do have a suggestion box on my channel where you can pop a question in there. If you see me on social media, you can drop me a line there. If it's I know on Blue Sky, there's kind of like an anti-DM kind of vibe there, and it's like if it's just a question you want me to answer for a Q&A or AMA session, I don't mind you guys jumping into DM, asking the question, and then running away, because I will either answer you directly and add it to my list, or I'll just add it to the list if you specify that it's for the live streams. So that's how to submit questions. Again, my website, my Light Weavers Clearing specifically for the on-demand content, no matter where you are. All those things, links are going to be in the show notes. There's also, for those of you who are into Wicca witchcraft specifically, I do have my Messages in the Moonlight. That's entirely free, 100% free. Since today everything was tarot related, I do want to point out that the Light Weavers Clearing, I do have the Tarot 101 with Evylyn Rose, because it sounds so fancy, right? That is 100% free as well. And I will just short disclaimer say that if you do sign up for that course, you do automatically get subscribed to my newsletter, the Starlight Circle. If that wasn't your intention, I get it. I get millions of emails. You can always unsubscribe. It does not hurt my feelings. Because if you're like me, you'll resubscribe again in a few months anyway. So kind of slightly defeating the purpose, but I get it. I do the same thing. Socials, Blue Sky, LinkedIn, obviously Twitch and YouTube, because I'm here right now. I think that's about it for that. Trying to keep it short today. And one last, because today is Saturday, April 18th, 2026. So if you are watching the replay or if you're on live and you are in the Newark, Delaware or surrounding areas and you're looking for something to do Sunday, April 19th, 2026, 11 a.m. to 4 p.m. Eastern, right here in Newark, Delaware, the Little Treasure Shop and Gallery are having a rebrand bash. They've recently changed their logo and they've added the and gallery to the Little Treasure Shop. So it used to just be the Little Treasure Shop. Now it's the Little Treasure Shop and Gallery. Come support local artists, artisans. 100% of those sales go directly to those artists and artisans and crafters whose products are there in the shop. So please come out. Oh, yes. Count me in on that. Yes. I will be there doing tarot readings, but there will also be, I think, tea, some sort of tea event where there'll be drinking tea, special teas. There'll be some sort of cheese thing, platter type thing. There'll be live music. There's a few other things. Definitely come come support. If you don't want a tarot reading from me, like it won't hurt my feelings. I'll get over it. But definitely come out, see what the shop has to offer, and buy something. Because again, 100% of those sales, what you spend, goes to that specific artisan or crafter. Come support our local businesses and local artists, please. All right, so that is going to wrap it up. As always, my sign-offs were super awkward, so sorry about that. But I hope you have a great rest of your weekend. If I don't see you tomorrow, I hope to see you around soon. If you're not in the area, if you ever do visit the area, please check out our local shops, because they are, Little Treasure Shop is a treasure. It is a gem. And many of our local shops really truly are. But anyway, have a great rest of your weekend. Thank you so much for watching, joining in. I love all your questions. Keep them coming. And I will see you on Monday for lunar lunch break. All right. Bye.